Well, staying on the DRC conflict, how is it all fighting and the escalating in the offensive from the M23 affecting communities, especially children? We've roped in the United Nations Children's Fund's Jean-Jacques Simon, who is the regional chief of communication there. And that, of course, is UNICEF. Thank you so much for your time and a very good afternoon to you. So we know that children and young people make up the majority of the millions of people who have been displaced in the DRC. Just give us a sense of the situation on the ground and your role as UNICEF in supporting children who've been affected by this long-standing conflict.
Well, it's an extremely volatile situation in and around Goma. As we speak, gunfire are still being heard and they're still fighting, so people are extremely worried, and there were also all kinds of IDP camps, internally displaced people camps around the Goma city, and they were home to 300,000 people, and they were emptied over the last few hours because of fighting. Most of them are women and children. A lot of children were most probably, dislocated from their families and their parents, so we have to locate them, not only to support them with healthcare, with shelter, with protection, but also they have to be reunited with their parents. It's happening in a situation where you already have millions of displaced people needing attention from international humanitarian agencies like ours. But children in this specific context need urgent attention and protection because they're vulnerable to all kinds of situations of that sort. What we also need is a major de-escalation of the conflict. Parties need to make sure they protect civilians, of course, including children and women, but they also have to make sure that they protect infrastructure. For the moment in Goma, you have no water, no electricity, also ports, airports, main roads are closed because of fighting. So we have major issues to bring humanitarian assistance, and we need these to be reopened as soon as possible.
Absolutely. The situation in Goma, of course, is a recent incident with the M23 taking over that particular town in this long-standing conflict. How has this further exacerbated your work? You speak of 300,000 people who have now also escaped from Goma, and many of them also children who've been, displaced now. How has that exacerbated just the work that you've been doing over the period in the DRC? And where to for the children that are looking for their parents, are desperate to find some form of normalcy in this chaos?
Well, since the situation in Goma is extremely dangerous for all civilians and for all people trying to bring assistance to the most affected people, it's extremely difficult today to circulate. The security situation is tense. You hear gunshots, you hear all kinds of military movements. So it's extremely difficult to do your job normally. But our office is still open, and we're trying to assess the situation of where the people went to take refuge so we can actually access them. But for that, we need access. And access is the key word today. Apart from de-escalation, we need access. And for that, we need humanitarian coordination with whoever is controlling the city as we speak, because this is an urgent situation. We need to access not only these 300,000 people that left the sites to God knows where, but we also need to bring our attention to the other people living in. It's a big city. It's a city of over 1 million people. And the situation is not only concerning for Goma, but also for the outskirts, but also for other cities such as Sake and Minova, where we need to have access as well.
It also comes at a time where your organization in the beginning of the year rang alarm bells in terms of just the worsening of sexual abuse conditions for especially children. When you say, you are trying to create awareness, where and who are you essentially speaking to, and what can be done about this particular situation?
Well, we heard reports of victims being, victims of children are being victims of grave violations, and we're talking here about, of course, children being murdered and killed and raped, and so this is an urgent situation which needs an urgent response as soon as possible. So, like I was saying, the most important is to localize the affected people. Where are they? How can we access them? And how can we bring this support as soon as we can? We have to reunite the children with their parents, for those who have been, put away from their families and parents. But we also need to make sure that they have psychosocial support as soon as possible, because having been witness of such a conflict and such extremely difficult situation, they need our support as soon as it's possible. And for that, we need parties to respect humanitarian law, to give us access as soon as possible and to de-escalate, because this situation cannot go on.
And it becomes increasingly worrying, particularly in Goma, as we are hearing reports that also the army, in the Congolese army, as well as the missions, are also not in that particular city at the moment, as they were, of course, kicked out by the M23 rebels. But Jean-Jacques, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Mr. Simon there, he is with UNICEF, just talking about how this particular conflict is affecting children.